Nicola Hill, our health correspondent. Nicola, where are we with the trials, specifically those 5 vaccines that are in phase 3? How are they progressing?
Well, they're the ones that we're all pinning our hopes on, aren't they, Maria? And it's interesting that we say about this race for the vaccine, and all the pharmaceutical companies say they're not competing against each other, they're racing against the virus. And the reason being that with so many people who will need to be inoculated, we're likely to need more than one vaccine. We have heard from the ones, the forefront at the moment, perhaps, saying that they're already manufacturing their vaccine, even though they haven't had the results of the phase 3 trials. And as you said, Maria, just to pick those out, so the initial trials are to test the safety. Then if it's safe, there's small numbers, then they test to see if it's effective. And then we have these massive phase 3 trials. And these are now being held mainly in Brazil, in South Africa and in America, because those are the areas where the infection is still very rife. There's a lot of community transmission. And so you want the people who have volunteered to be vaccinated to come into contact with the virus to see if the vaccine works. So the ones that the forerunners, so to speak, it sounds a bit like a horse race, is obviously the Oxford one, which we discussed last week. Their news that it was definitely promoting response both of antibodies and the killer T cells, 2 parts of the immune system. So that generated a lot of excitement and a lot of hope. Then we've heard just yesterday that Moderna and Pfizer, who are both making slightly different types of vaccines to the one that the Oxford and AstraZeneca one is making, they've launched their phase 3 trials, each of those wanting 30,000 people to be inoculated with their potential vaccine. We've got we've got a couple of Chinese vaccines underway in phase 3 trials. Not hearing as much information about them, but there was research published last week about one of them that's being known as the China vaccine. And that's had its phase 2 results, and that showed too that it was promoting both antibody and T cell responses. Didn't seem to be as effective in an older population, which is important because obviously it's the elderly who have weaker immune systems and are more likely to be severely impacted by Covid-19. So I think more trials are underway to see if it needs a booster dose, and this is something that's being considered. The Oxford team last week said that they had just 10 people who had 2 doses and their immune responses were even more encouraging. And I listened to a podcast with Dr. Richard Horton, who's the editor of The Lancet, and he was saying that he doesn't think at the end of this year we're going to get a vaccine, but hopefully by the end of next year, and it's looking hopeful anyway.
The end of next year. Well, at least he says he's looking hopeful. But before I let you go, one more. Not all vaccines are effective, 100% effective. For them to be rolled out, what needs to happen?
This is a difficult question. I spoke to Professor Martin Bachmann, who's Professor of Immunology at Bern University in Switzerland. He said 90% to actually get rid of the virus, 70% of its herd immunity. So I said to him, what, do we have to have a vaccine that's 90%, or we have to have 90% of the population vaccinated? And he said that's a challenging question. So there was some modelling done in an American publication where they looked at this. And basically, it depends on how effective the vaccine is as to how many people need to be inoculated. And if we have these anti-vaxxers who are being quite vocal at the moment, you've had polls showing that percentages of people won't be vaccinated, which personally I find quite difficult to understand. But if you do have a percentage of the population who won't get vaccinated, then you have to make sure that the vaccine that we have got is more effective.
Nicola Hill, thank you so much for that. See you tomorrow. Thank you.